This is part 3 of 7, or the 14 chapters of the book, The Covenant Code, which is just finished in this draft form. And we're going through these 7 presentations, go through the 14 chapters. And so far, we've been through the introduction in the first 3 chapters. And it's a building block where up to the 6th chapter is all the building blocks. Then it starts really in the 6th chapter to get into actually measuring and things. And we're doing this so that there'll be a very clear understanding of what we're doing and when, why, and all that stuff. So we've already established that our relationship with God is a covenant, not a contract, and that's why the whole Bible is called the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, or the Old Testament and the New Testament. Testament and covenant are basically the same, interchangeable. But so there is a covenant, and we've established that the seventh day of the history of the world was the Sabbath, which memorialized what was the covenant that was pronounced on the 6th day when man was created, for man to have dominion, being created in the image and likeness of God, and have dominion over the world and over everything in it. It was a gift from God, and it was fulfilled really the first day that Adam and Eve woke up together on the Sabbath, and God had rested from his creation, from his work, and they had fulfilled that day together. And we learned, more about, what had happened on the 6th day, and the Lord of the Sabbath, and who he was. And he was the one that breathed life into Adam and gave the warning, the commandment about the tree of good and evil. And up until that end of the 2nd chapter of Genesis, all was good. And then we see the entrance of the introduction of the serpent, the deceiver, and what he did to go out of his way to entrap man, and how he did it, the tactics he used, which are the same as he does today. And we really saw, what a covenant is by the response of the Lord in condemning the accuser, in making the promise, the very first prophecy that all of the prophecy is based on, which is that he would stand between Satan and the woman, and he would stand between her seed and his seed, and that he would crush the head of the serpent, and he would do that personally, and it would bruise his heel like he's stepping on a serpent. And I know I stepped on a bumblebee one time by accident in my kitchen, and of course it stung me. But that's it was his last kind of act of defense, whatever. I never saw him, but yeah, so I got a little sting in the bottom of my foot, but it ended up, crushing the bee by accident. So, that's what happens when you crush the head of a serpent, you're going to get a bite. And so we saw, that prophecy, that covenant promise, all tied together, and every prophecy since then and every covenant fulfillment since then is all tied to this and tied to its fulfillment. So we then looked at the instructions given to the last generation, and to go back and measure that covenant. We also saw, what the covenant code is. In the book, that everything that Moses wrote, the Lord wrote the 10 Commandments on stone, but he commanded Moses to write on a scroll. And Moses did write. He wrote everything the Lord showed him. And you start to read what happens in the first 40 days. And the very first thing the Lord talks about is building a sanctuary, and then all the details of that. And then, after the 40 days, it goes up again for another 40 days. And in between time, Moses, uh, takes the blood and puts it on the altar, puts it on the people, and says, this is the blood of the covenant pertaining to all that the Lord has said. And, so we went through all that. And now we're starting to say, okay, well, how do we follow these instructions that's given to the last generation? Because in Revelation, it says to read, hear, and keep the words of this prophecy, to obey the words, follow the instructions. And there's no clearer instructions given than in Revelation 10 and 11. So we just a couple of quotes here to start off with about What that calling is, Revelation 11:1. There's given to me a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar uh, worship therein. Hebrews 8:5 is talks about that the place where they serve, whether it's a tabernacle or temple, is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. This is why Moses was warned when he was about to build the tabernacle. See to it that you do not that you make it according to the pattern shown you on the mountains. He's not supposed to deviate from it at all. And then again, Exodus 25:9, you must make the tabernacle and design all its furnishing according to the pattern I show you. And Colossians 2:17, these are a shadow of the things to come, but the body that casts it belongs to Christ. So we know that this is a blueprint of how God would fulfill his covenant through Christ. That whole tabernacle pattern is a prophecy or a blueprint. So now we're where we're at. We want to learn, well, how do we observe the covenant code? How do we follow those instructions given in 11:1? So we follow it. The surest way to follow the instructions of the Lord are to follow the prophetic trail. So, you can jump back and forth and try and do your own study about, well, how am I going to measure the temple? But the surest way that's already inspired is to follow the prophetic trail. So we have one clue to start off with, which is Son of Man. The way that Jesus referred to that, we're going to go through that in a minute. But that's a name. It's not a personal name. It's a more of a title, and it's only ever used on two people, which is Ezekiel and on Jesus. So if I give you the first some famous kind of nicknames, you'll probably be able to fill in the third word. So Billy the Kid, Alexander the Great, Doubting Thomas. But because these names are so synonymous with people, you would get an image immediately of who we're talking about. So the term Son of Man is used by Jesus 80 times as a way to refer to himself. 32 times in Matthew, 14 in Mark, 26 times in Luke, and 10 times in John. Remember, this is the gospel. This is the good news. This is just talking about the fulfillment of the covenant being fulfilled. In all these texts, Jesus is the speaker. So no one ever addresses him as Son of Man. He addresses himself as Son of Man. So, people talk about date setting or whatever. They always use this one verse, which is found in Mark 13:32. It says, "But of that day and of that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father." Mark 13:32. But they never talk about the very next sentence because the disciples had asked him when he was going to return, when he would restore all things. So the very next sentence after saying no man will know, um, only the Father, it says, "Take ye heed, watch and pray, for you know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man uh, taking a far journey, not a short journey, far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, like Jesus gave authority to his apostles, and to every man his own work, and commanded the porter to watch." So when you had a watchman back in those days, you might have flags or trumpets or signals, but everybody knew their role. They would go out and do their work. They'd be working in the field, so they'd be working wherever. And all they had to do was watch the watchman. If he gave a signal, they knew what it was for. And maybe that there's some animals coming towards the field that are going to consume some of some of the plants or so that they knew what to do. It could be an enemy. It could be the masters coming back home. But the watchman was perched high. He could see what's going on from a distance, and he would sound a signal to them if at the appropriate time. So Jesus said, "Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at evening or midnight or the cock crowing or in the morning." lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. So what I say unto you, so he's talking to the disciples, I say unto all, watch. So the key words here is Son of Man and watch, because they're asking about when he would return. He doesn't rebuke them. He tells them, you have to watch, watch and pray. So what do you watch and pray? So when God made Ezekiel his prophet, it is written, Son of Man. So that's what um, the Lord referred to Ezekiel as Son of Man. I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore, hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. So we are to watch through our observation of the prophetic word of God, of the prophets. But in particular, in this case of, um, this instruction, we're to watch Ezekiel. He's the Son of Man. He's the main clue for how we fulfill what Jesus asked us to do. And what does Jesus say at the very beginning of Revelation? It's the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants, which things must shortly come. So exactly what Ezekiel's supposed to do, this revelation that was stretched from the time of the disciples all the way to our time. This book was given for us to watch and to heed the instructions. So when we compare the book of Ezekiel with the book of Revelation, it's amazing how much they have in common, how much the exact same thing that's spoke of in Ezekiel is spoken of in fulfillment terms or in similar terms in Revelation. And that's not by accident, obviously. So you have like the throne vision is chapter 1 in Ezekiel and chapter 4 in Revelation. The book being opened is chapter 2 and 3 in Ezekiel, chapter 5 in Revelation. And that's the seals being broken. So you go through this and you see all of these similarities. But we're concerned with the instruction that we're given in Revelation 10 and 11. So we go down to number 10 over here, the eating of the book, the instruction to eat and digest the book. Chapter 2 in Ezekiel, and chapter 10, verses 8 to 11 in Revelation. So we're going to follow the prophetic trail and see what Ezekiel is told and what it's about, so we can understand for ourselves how to follow that instruction. So here's the calling of Ezekiel when he's told to digest that book. But thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious, like that rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat what I give thee. And when I looked, behold, a hand was sent unto me. So this hand came down with something in it. I looked, behold, on the hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book. Remember, they wrote in scrolls back then, was therein. So there's a whole book presented in a scroll. He spread it before me, and it was written within and without, so written on both sides. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou finds. So fully digest this, make this like your food, make this part of you. Eat this roll, and then go speak to the house of Israel. Then did it, and it was in my mouth as sweet or as honey for sweetness. So remember, they're in captivity, they're in Babylon, and he is told to digest this scroll. And once he's finished consuming it completely, then to go out and speak to God's people, speak on God's behalf. So that's the calling of Ezekiel. That's what he's supposed to do. That's why he's supposed to do it. So the calling of the seventh generation. And the voice which I heard from heaven spoke unto me again, said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel, which stands upon the sea and upon the earth. It's a mighty angel. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it and eat it up. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand, and I ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. Why was his belly bitter? The same as why Daniel got a little sick after he received a revelation of how long it would be until Christ came. And the same thing, this is John, who's just finished evangelizing the world. He's 95 years old when he gets this revelation. All the other apostles have already passed. He's the last one. And he sees that one more time, the world has to be evangelized again, kings, prophets, etc. And he sees the disarray and the lack of belief that's going on at that time. So it's sweet as honey when he's professing this truth, but it makes his belly bitter because it's has to be done again. He said unto me, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. So the same thing that Ezekiel was told. Digest this book, and then once you've digested it, then go and warn the people for me. So when we go down the prophetic trail, we understand what we're supposed to do in this instruction, how we're supposed to digest this book, and how we're supposed to look towards this tabernacle pattern. The last generation to evangelize the world prior to his return is specifically instructed to eat or fully digest the open book, and then to rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. And they're related because Revelation 11:1 is the very next sentence after the end of chapter 10. So digest this, and specifically the scroll that I want you to digest is this pattern. This directs us to the covenant code, or the book of the covenant, that contains this worship pattern. The call to measure the temple was first given to Ezekiel. He had witnessed so remember, he's in the temple. He's supposed to measure it, and he had witnessed the departure of the Lord from the temple in a vision. Well, now in vision, he's given to observe his return. And what's the seventh generation about? His return. We are not left to guess as to the intent of the Lord in calling the seventh generation to measure the temple. We need only observe the calling of Ezekiel when instructed to measure the temple, to observe the intent of the Lord in having us follow his instructions. And this is found more specifically in Ezekiel chapter 40. In the 20th year, so 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, the 10th day of the month, the 14th year after that the city was smitten, in the selfsame day, the hand of the Lord was upon me and brought me thither in the visions of God, brought he me into the land of Israel. And he set me upon a very high mountain, by which was as the frame of a city on the south. And he brought me thither, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand, so like a plumb line, a measuring line, and a measuring reed. And he stood in the gate. And the man said to me, Son of man, behold with thine eyes, and hear with thine ears, and set thine heart upon all that I shall show thee, for to the intent that I might show them unto thee art thou brought hither. Declare all that thou see to the house of Israel. So he sees the incarnate, the Lord, with a plumb line in his hand and a measuring reed, and he says, I brought you here so you could envision all this, so that through you I could show this to the people. Just like John's brought together to record this vision and to which he did faithfully, so that it could be shown to the people. You can also observe what happens as Ezekiel is in the midst of completing the destruction and has measured the inner sanctuary and is about to measure the altar. So he starts measuring the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seats and all the stuff in the holy place, most holy place, and he's about to come out into the courtyard. So he brings him to the gate of the temple, the entrance gate. So now he's about to start measuring the courtyard. It says, after he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looks towards the east, and behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. So he comes right through that gate, and his voice was like the noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. Just keep that in mind, shined with his glory. It was according to the appearance of the vision which I saw, even according to the vision that I saw when I came to destroy the city, and the visions were like the vision that I saw by the river Shabar, and I fell upon my face. So he'd seen the original destruction and the leaving of the Lord. Now he's seen here the same sort of vision, the same Lord, but instead of leaving, he's coming, he's returning. And the glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate, whose prospect is toward the east. So the Spirit took me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of the Lord filled the house. So just like when the original tabernacle was built, and the glory of the Lord was so great that Moses could even, no one could even be inside. And when Solomon consecrated the temple, same thing. Nobody could even go inside because the glory was so strong, and his presence was so strong that no man could even be in there at that time. So this great glory, this is, remember, this is after he's already started measuring, he's already got the inner sanctuary measured. He's brought to the gate, and now the Lord actually returns. He actually comes in as he's, and he's actually inside. He's right up, he hasn't gone into the sanctuary yet, but he's in the courtyard, and and his glory fills everything around him. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power. Now, this is Revelation 18. So I want you to compare what we just read to Revelation 18. After these things, I saw, remember, we're given instruction in Revelation 10 and 11. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven crying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. This is a very, very last moment. He's right in the courtyard, about to enter into the sanctuary. It's the last call, and but it's with a mighty, with a glory and the power. This last angel, this which is, by the way, the seventh angel. So this is from Ellen White. It's right into Ellen White. The angel of Revelation 18. The prophecies in the 18th of Revelation will soon be fulfilled. Ah, I'm sorry. During the proclamation of the third angel's message, another angel is to come down from heaven, having great power. So the third angel, if you count what happens the next, there's the third, and then there's the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and Revelation 18 is really the seventh. So the earth is to be lightened with his glory. The Spirit of the Lord um, will so graciously bless consecrated human instrumentalities that men, women, and children will open their lips in praise and thanksgiving, filling the earth with the knowledge of God and with his unsurpassed glory as the waters covered the sea. Those who have held the beginning of their confidence firm unto the end will be wide awake during that time that the third angel's message is proclaimed with great power. That's from the Review and Herald, October 13th, 1904. Timothy 2:14-16, C.D.G. White, etc. Message prepares for translation. Amid the confusing cries, Lo, here is Christ, lo, there is Christ, will be born a special testimony, a special message of truth, appropriate for this time, which message is to be received, believed, and acted upon. It is the truth, not fanciful ideas. Um, the eternal truth of the Word of God will stand forth free from all seductive errors and all and spiritualistic interpretations, free from all fancifully drawn, alluring pictures. Falsehoods will be urged upon the attention of God's people, but the truth is to stand clothed in its beautiful, pure garments. The Word, precious in its holy, uplifting influence, is not to be degraded to a level with common, ordinary matters. It is always to remain uncontaminated by the fallacies by which Satan seeks to deceive, if possible, the very elect. So this message goes along with the seventh angel in Revelation 18. And what is happening in Revelation 10:11? It's the seventh, the seventh thunders have sounded. It's the seventh angel, begins to sound in Revelation 11. So it's all tied together with his message about, measuring the tabernacle and going back and following these instructions. So then Ezekiel carries on here 3 chapters later. So he's still to continue measuring, but he now the Lord he's done enough that he wants him now to start speaking for him to the people. He says, "Now let them put away their whoredom and their carcasses of their kings." And remember, we just read about Babylon and kings doing fornication and all this stuff, and the carcasses of the kings far from me, and I will dwell in the midst of them forever. Thou son of man, show the house, which is the house of the Lord, to the house of Israel, to his people, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. If they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them the form of the house, and the fashion thereof, and the goings out thereof, and the comings in thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the laws thereof, all the laws, see that, and write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof, and all the ordinances thereof. Um, this is the law of the house. What house? The temple, the house of the law of the house of Israel, and the law of the house of the Lord. Upon the top of the mountain, whole limit thereof, round about shall be most holy. So all the whole land of Israel. Behold, this is the law of the house. So when we're talking about this tabernacle and its pattern and showing the people this, it's almost showing them the law, the covenant code, the law, because it's a law of his covenant. That's why the tablets of stone are kept in the ark of his covenant. It's all about the covenant. It's all about foretelling it, fulfilling it, and showing the amazing, incredible truth, supernatural truth of the miracles that have been done and the prophecy, the fulfillment of these things, all told in advance, even in a pattern of a holy worship site, of a tabernacle, is a prophecy of all these things. It's in that incredible truth shows it all originated from God, because nobody else can tell history in advance of its occurrence. It's so it's this beauty that when others that are dying of thirst, spiritual thirst in the end days, and it's getting worse and worse, they thirst for this true knowledge, this evidence of the truth. So that's how that's the highlights of chapter 4. Now in chapter 5, basically it's to take the first item, which we're to measure. So the very first thing that the Lord talks about is the most holy uh, article, which is the Ark of the Covenant, and its mercy seat. And because they're two separate things, and the mercy seat is on top, we start with the mercy seat. And so the very first item there. And so these are the actual instructions that are given in the pattern that Moses recorded. And thou shalt make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and a cubit and a half the breadth thereof. And thou shalt make 2 cherubim of gold. Of beaten work shalt thou make them in the 2 ends of the mercy seat. So in other words, they're all one piece. They're formed by manual shaping. They're not welded back on or taken from 2 or 3 pieces. It's all one work. Make one cherub on the one end, the other cherub on the other end. Even of the mercy seat shall ye make the cherubim on the 2 ends thereof. And the cherubim shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and their faces shall look one to another toward the mercy seat. So they're facing each other, but they're looking down towards the mercy seat. Shall the faces of the cherubim be? And thou shalt put the mercy seat above upon the ark. And in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee, which is the stone that was written by the hand of the Lord. And there I will meet with thee. So he's going to meet Moses at the mercy seat. And I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim. So this is yeah, how the Lord will meet with his prophet is in this very spot, this most holy place. From between the 2 cherubim, which are upon the testimony of all the things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. That's Exodus 25, 8 to 22. Yeah. So you have to pardon my picture. I couldn't find the one I wanted to. But what I mainly want to show here is that the it's a separate piece. It has a breadth of 1.5, a length of 2.5, and the cherubim are facing each other. They're looking down. Their wings are stretched out. So this is the mercy seat, and this is how it is differentiated from the ark that it covers. So just some general observations is that uh, there's 7 articles of furnishing given for the tabernacle. Only the Ark of the Covenant and its mercy seat were to be located in the most holy place in the tabernacle. Um, and I have a diagram that's actually on the next one, so it's as above, but it's the next one. Pure gold. The mercy seat is one of only 2 items in the entire tabernacle that was to be made from pure gold. The 7-candled menorah is the only other gold furnishing. The remaining hard surface items in the tabernacle, the boards, the walls, the ark, the altar of incense, table of showbread, are all made from hard wood that is completely overlaid in gold. The mercy seat is pure gold, hand beaten to form a single unit encompassing the artistic cherubim betrayals. So it's the most valuable piece in there, and I was going to show you, but not enough room to do everything. But John had talked about the other day that how many talents of gold are used in the sanctuary, and what the estimated price would be, and you can actually add it up very particularly. And I did last night just again to double check, but it's about $100 million US would be the value of that mercy seat in terms of just the price of gold today. So it's a valuable piece. It's in the most holy place, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on the next slide. So here's the overall pattern, and in a minute I'm going to invite anyone else that wants to chime in to add if they want to. But we were looking at um, the Ark of Mercy being here inside the most holy of holies, or most holy place. Then we have over here the altar of incense. Can't really see it because the arrow's over it, but it's just move this thing so I can see a little bit better. Just one sec. Oops, darn. There we go. I just got this little screen in front of me. I gotta move. There we go. So we have the altar of incense. We have the candle here, the menorah. We have the table of showbread over here. Then we have the laver, and then we have the altar of burnt offerings right here. This is that east gate that I was talking about, the only way into the tabernacle. So the journey from Jesus, from the throne, all the way to the altar or the cross, and here's the baptism, the laver. So the journey goes this way to perform fulfill the atonement, and then returns this way on a return to the throne room in heaven. So, but let's talk about what's unique about the mercy seat and because when we're looking at measuring this and the blueprint, what does it point to? What does it tell us? So first of all, it's in the most holy place. Second of all, it can only be accessed 1 day per year. And we read in the Bible, for example, about having to have an appointment with the king. You can't come in just any time. You have to have appointments. Even we read that in Malachi, and you have to have an appointment. And there's an appointed day for that. Come in, and it's also only one person that's allowed to come in on that day, and that is the anointed, the high priest. So it's this day of meeting with the king. It's appointed. The only person that's allowed to come that day is the Messiah or the anointed, the Christ. The he has to come with blood from this altar, from the sacrifice. So, and he has to sprinkle blood on that mercy seat, right where the chairmen are looking down on the seat, right the spot they're looking at. He has to sprinkle blood there, and before the ark as well. So this is all pointing to the atonement, and we have a series of on the Day of Atonement and all that went through, and how he comes in initially with his robes of servitude. The 1 day a year that the high priest wears his white linen robe, so he's come in there with blood-stained white linen robe. But when the atonement has been accepted, he's to drop that white robe. Well, first of all, he comes out once, and he makes atonement for the altar. He sprinkles blood there too, which point to when Jesus, came out and saw his disciples and gave them assurance, for 40 days that, he visited certain people and etc. But then he is, ascended to heaven. Um, the high priest would go back in the tabernacle one more time. Then he would get rid of the robe of servitude, and he'd put on his majestic robe, his robe of royalty, and he'd put on his crown, and he would then come out one last time, and everybody would see him in his majesty. And at that point, they would know that their atonement has been delivered, and he would bless them, and then they would go. So that points to the return of Jesus, in all of his majesty. So anyway, it's a very special. This mercy has a number of things. I mean, its whole purpose is for 1 day. Its whole purpose is for the blood to be sprinkled on the mercy seat, and then the whole thing being mercy. It's part of the law of the covenant is this mercy seat. It's one of the holiest day of the whole year, the seventh month, the 10th day. So it's Sabbath of Sabbath, etc. So if anybody else has anything to add about the mercy seat or the Day of Atonement that I missed, because I just want us to, because this is all going to play into how we then compare what this says to history. So is there anything else that I've missed that someone would like to add into there for the mercy seat or the Day of Atonement. Okay, well, I can't see the views right now, so I'll assume that we're good there. So you can always add it to the chat later on. So this whole thing is about points to one thing. The mercy seat points to the atonement, plain and simple. It's about the atonement. It's how the atonement is done through the sprinkling of the blood. It's who does it. Only one person invited to that on one date that there's an appointment for. That's an appointed time, and that one is the Messiah in Hebrew, the Christ in Greek, but it's the anointed one. The anointed high priest is the only one that goes there, and not without blood. And that atonement, so when we're talking about the covenant, that is the key to the whole covenant. It's to redeem man. It's to pay the price of their redemption. And so this pattern of the covenant is vital to understanding. And we get a lot of Christian terms from this pattern that people don't even realize really, where they come from, but like redemption and salvation and the Lamb of God and things like that. But it's integral to prophecy. And so let me look over here. And what they witnessed was exactly um, as the pure gold mercy seat had prefigured of the atonement by his anointed for 1400 years prior to the birth of Jesus. So they'd been practicing this for 1400 years. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre, weeping. As she wept, she stooped down and looked in the sepulchre and saw two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. So these two angels, like one's at this end, one's at the other, they're not pointing towards the middle anymore. They're sitting waiting for her. So they know that she's outside, and they're looking, but they're sitting at the end, just like the cherub here. But there's something in the middle here, which is the blood-stained death robes. The robes that Jesus was wrapped in. And we're told in scripture, so this picture is not quite accurate because we're told they were neatly folded there, but um, precisely where the blood was to be sprinkled on the mercy seat, between the two cherubim, lay the blood-stained white linen, witnessed by Mary Magdalene and John and Peter. Because it says, then cometh Simon Peter following him, which is following John, and they went into the sepulchre and saw the linen clothes lay. So there's three witnesses there. There's Mary Magdalene, John, and Peter. Now they didn't see the two angels or cherubim, but they did see an empty tomb with the clothes there. So was it Jesus that folded the clothes? Or after Mary left, maybe this picture is accurate, and it was the cherubim who folded them, left them in place, for Peter and John to see. Either way, how could you have something 1400 years in advance? Build me this to look like this, point towards this one event, and be so, you couldn't draw a clearer picture. You couldn't, there would just be no confusion about what this mercy seat means or what it foretold. And it's important because when we're measuring the temple, as we're about, so when it says measure, it means observe everything. So right now we're observing, like we're going to do with everything else, the holy days, the holy ways, what's supposed to happen on that day, of each piece that we're going to look at. And then we'll take the measurements of it and we'll compare those measurements to history, prophetic history. So we do that the next chapter for the mercy seat. But right now we're observing what does it mean? What does it mean? So that when we look into history, we can say, okay, well then, what date in history did this happen, and how does it compare to this pattern? So let me just go over here. And what is this? Covenants are sealed. Um, and even today, when I put a couple of variations of seals here because notice that they all look like blood spots, whether it's the wax seals or the paper seals or the rubber seals, they look like that. And it's because that's how they originated. They were always sealed in blood. It was either the blood of the testator or it was the blood of, his flock or whatever. But covenants are always sealed. And when you look at, just look at maybe some certificate you have or whatever, and it will look like one of these, you know. And the more formal it is, the more it'll look like blood. It'd be like wax or rubber. It'll look more like this, and there'll be texture to it. And when you rolled up a papyrus scroll and you dropped blood on it, it did seal it. It did act like a glue. It acted like a way to. So if you took a document, rolled it up part way, put a blood spot there, rolled it up a little further, blood spot there, you would definitely, as you unrolled it, break those seals, and it would be obvious that those seals have been broken because now they wouldn't stick back together again. But the seal of the covenant is the blood, and the blood of the covenant is Christ, and it was poured out on the cross in Calvary. It was poured out, and it was sprinkled. And when the apostles began to preach, they called it the sprinkling of the blood. You know, when Moses gave the covenant to Israel, he sprinkled the blood on the people. He sprinkled the blood on the altar, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant pertaining to everything that God has said to you." And they said, "All He has said, we will do." So we're establishing these things that we're not on some wild goose chase. We're following the prophetic trail, and we're doing exactly what we're told to do. When someone says, "Oh, your date setting," we're not looking for a date. Peter and the disciples weren't looking for a date. They said, "Are you going to establish your kingdom at this time, in this generation?" Who would not want to know that? Who loved Christ? Who would not want to know prophecy? When are you returning? And Christ never rebuked him for that. He didn't. He said, "You're not going to know the hour of the day. You don't need to." But as I draw closer, the watchman will tell you. He'll tell you, you know, the master is returning. If you watch the prophets, watch. Ezekiel was a sign. Watch him, and you'll know what's happening. Jesus is a sign. Watch him, and you'll know what's happening. So this whole thing, if someone said, and based on everything we've talked about so far, well, why are you measuring the tabernacle? The question should be, why aren't you? It's not why I am, it's why aren't you? Because it's given in Revelation as an instruction, as a mandate, and we're following the prophetic trail of how to do it and why to do it and what purpose it's for. To digest this and then to be able to have the latter rain and the mighty angel empower us and to spreading that last message in the latter rain. So, I just want to make sure when I did the book that there was a foundation built before we just started measuring numbers. The next uh, beginning tomorrow, we'll start doing that type of measuring. But up until now, this is the end of the fifth chapter is today. The sixth chapter begins tomorrow, and that's when we start to do, like I said, some of the more prophetic measuring and things like that. But that's what the first six chapters of the book cover, and we've gone through them all pretty quickly, and hopefully, it's been clear enough. But in the book, you get a lot more details of each one of these things, and the scriptures follow it up. I think that's my last slide. Just want to double check. Yes. So I can stop sharing here. I have some time. Yep, I've got some time to answer any questions or comments if anybody has anything to add or to
That
ask
was
about.
That was very good. I do have one I wanted to say when you were looking at the ark and everything and telling how much it was valued at. Can you imagine? I never thought about it, but how heavy that was to carry.
Four
I
hundred
mean, those
pounds.
guys must have had muscles. I mean,
Well,
on
um,
their shoulders, that would have broke me.
yeah, I'll go back since we got a little bit of time here. I can go back because I did the calculation and also showed that David showed how many people carried that.
I thought there were only four.
Yeah, which is about 75 pounds each, and or a little over, but it's around the same weight as a military pack is for the U.S. government. When they travel distance, they have a certain weight limit or whatever, and it's around the same.
Wow.
So, and of course, it's on the poles and stuff like that. But let me just go back to. I'm doing this as I'll share it as soon as I get to it. But I actually just calculated out right from the shekels that were collected and the talents how much it weighs. So let me just see if I can get to that real quick. Any other questions while I'm looking this up?
I
Or,
was going to add again how fantastic it is when you share the two angels in the tomb and the two angels on the ark. I had never heard that until you mentioned it um, in the past, and so I shared
You
that with
see it.
my
You see
boys.
it, but you don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell them, how many angels? Oh, there were two in there. They always know now. I say, how many
yeah,
are in the Ark of the Covenant? Two. So they
yeah,
understand. It's a beautiful depiction, and I'm glad you shared it.
yeah. It's. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's the facts. And that's why it's included in Scripture. I mean, the New Testament is all about fulfillment, and it usually explains, such was, fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, but there's so much. The whole thing is fulfillment. Like John says at the end of his book, if I were to include everything that Christ fulfilled, there wouldn't be a book big enough to hold it. You know, so they only give you the highlights of what was fulfilled and things like that, because um, yeah, because it was too much. I mean, every detail in Christ's life is a fulfillment one way or the other. So let me
It's
just
strange you say that, Brent. I was just reading a book here, Impossible Prophecies Fulfilled, that defies skeptics by the Standish brothers. I was reading it this afternoon, just people who say some of the prophecies that were not fulfilled that are actually, yeah, it's actually, and you're
yeah.
saying the same thing.
So here's a part where David, when they were going to move the ark, and David called, and he even names them the priests, the Levites. So there's one, two, three, four, five, six. So I forgot how many it was too, but it's six. Um, and even rather that you may bring up the Ark of the Covenant. So yeah, so I think the mercy seat weighs more than the Ark because it's pure gold. But um, so given the dimensions, pure gold mercy seat weighed at least 6 talents, or about 20% of the total amount of gold given for use in the sanctuary. This is a significant portion. The next closest single item um, in value is the seven-candle menorah that was also made of pure gold, but it had a given away to 1 talent. So this was 6 times heavier. The 400-pound mercy seat is of rare value and substance with an equivalent current value exceeding $100 million. So in total, with the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat, it's about 7 talents. So
Well,
and
Brent, go back to that, back up to that where you have it there, wherein David called for, go back up a little bit. When you read that, the first, it says they are to sanctify themselves. The first time they did it, they did not sanctify themselves.
Right.
And they told them to go back next time to make sure that they sanctified themselves. You know, that's like the high priest going in, they had to purify themselves.
It says right here, Keith, I prepared for because you did not do it the first time, the Lord
Right.
our God broke out against us because we did not consult him about the proper order. So the priests and Levites sanctify themselves to bring up the ark of the Lord, God of Israel, and the children of the Levites bore the ark of the God on their shoulders by its poles, as Moses had commanded, according to the word of the Lord. Now, remember, this is David's time. That's 400 years after, so they had to go back and consult the original instructions, from Moses, which are the original instructions from the Lord.
Well, I wonder the tribe of Levi's, I wonder if they was better fit than some of the other tribes. Physically.
Maybe so.
I'm sure Yah gave them the ability to carry it.
Right. That's why I mean, it's probably why he picked the tribe of Levi's from among the tribe of Levi to do that
I think
task.
they're probably more spiritually fit because of what they did.
Yeah.
I was listening to a Jewish rabbi one time, and of course, this is their writings, not scripture, but they said that he didn't actually carry it. The ark carried them. It was a supernatural power that moved it. So I don't know.
Could be.
Ben, we weren't there, so we don't know. It very well could have been, because it was heavy.
Yeah, I've been wondering that actually the last few weeks, because for them to carry it miles and miles and miles
In the desert.
in the desert is pretty wild.
Well, they not only had the weight of the ark and the mercy seat, but there was the weight of the stone commandments
Yeah.
inside it.
Exactly.
That's why I said Yah gave them the ability. We don't know how. If he made it lighter, he made them stronger, but somehow Yah gave them the ability.
So much of that was, we can't explain it.
I think that's really good for us to know, because we hear and we understand that if he gives you a command to do something, he gives you the way to fulfill it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you had someone from the fire department today that looked on that tabernacle, they would say, that wouldn't pass. There's only one exit. With all the fires that they have in there. Working in the ER, we had fire department come through all the time and tell you can't have that gurney here, you can't do this, and you can't do that.
One thing you brought out that I found interesting, because I had never thought of it before, was I knew the angels that when Mary looked in the tomb was sitting at the foot and the head, but I never thought about the grave clothes and the blood stain on them being between them, representing the mercy seat.